Good afternoon, everybody. Happy Friday, and welcome to another of my alumni guest lecture series, is what I'm calling it, which is awesome. Former students of mine and former Huskies who have some great advice for you, my current students, and just continuing a tradition of mentorship that I am very proud of, that I have really no part in other than to try and facilitate this. So in a second here, I'm going to mute my mic and turn it over to Melissa Kendall, who you may have seen her video on my website, but if not, you should check it out after the fact. And she's got an awesome lecture for you guys today. Take it away, Melissa.
Hello, everyone. My name is Melissa, not to be confused with Marissa, and I'm here to talk about careers in computer science. No technical issues? Everything's good? Give me a thumbs up. Make sure I'm good. Okay, cool. I work for IQmetrics. If you haven't heard of it before, we are a software development company, and we make wireless point-of-sale software. If you remember what going to a mall was like, all those little kiosks selling cell phones, many of them use our products to sell you phones. I've had many different titles during my career. While attending the U of M in Winnipeg, I joined the co-op program, which allowed me to alternate work with school. I took my first posting as a web developer in Manitoba Hydro, and then my second and third postings at IQmetrics. In 2012, I graduated and started working for IQmetrics full-time as a software developer. But after a few years, I decided I wanted to change, and I accepted an offer within the company to do some technical writing instead, which was desperately needed at the time. We had people coming on to use our software, but it was an API product. So without documentation, API product is functionally useless. So we needed someone to do all of that work. But after a while of that, I got bored of working primarily by myself, and I switched, again within the same company, to doing business analysis. Finally, last year, I decided to make a return to technical writing, this time with a new title, people to manage, and more responsibilities. So some of those titles that I mentioned you might have heard before, but one of them might be new, business analyst or BA. It's not a role people often talk about in school, and I think the first time I ever heard the term BA was when I was working for Manitoba Hydro, so not until I actually went into the industry. Even though every single software company and software development team that I've ever worked with has a BA or someone like a BA. That's because a BA is anyone who does business analysis, regardless of the job title. Okay, so what's business analysis then? The official BA body of knowledge defines business analysis as the practice of enabling change in an organizational context by defining needs and recommending solutions that deliver value to stakeholders. Such a beautiful thing that you'd see in a corporate slide, but yeah, that's a crap definition. We're not going to use that definition. We're going to use my definition of business analysis, which is getting to the why. You can probably tell I have not updated this example since I gave this presentation last year. Let's say I was late coming into work. Well, why was I late? Well, you know, I got stuck in traffic. Well, okay, why did you get stuck in traffic? Well, unfortunately, I left the house a little bit later than normal. Okay, well, why did you leave the house later than normal? Yeah, my alarm didn't wake me up. Well, why didn't your alarm wake you up? I forgot to replace the batteries in my alarm clock. If we tried to solve this problem before we made it all the way to the bottom, we might come up with solutions that don't actually solve the problem. If we decided the real problem was, oh, I left the house too late, we might decide a solution to that problem is send me to bed earlier. But if I still don't wake up in time because I still haven't replaced the batteries in my alarm clock, I'm still going to be late to work. We're going to have the same problem. This is why I became a BA. I kept writing code that didn't fix problems. It was frustrating to write code that no one used because it didn't solve a problem that anyone had. So what does a BA do? Let's talk about some of the things I do in my role. Although my title is documentation coordinator, a lot of what I do is still business analysis. I have a whole lot of meetings. Getting down to that why takes a lot of discussion. Although in our example, it was fairly easy, it can be very challenging to dig deep down, especially when people are resistant and then think, no, I know what the problem is. Are you sure? I do, or at least I did, do a lot of travel to meet with customers and help them dig into their problems, understand how we could help them. And as a result of those meetings and the travel, I create all sorts of documents in the form of what we call user stories. So artifacts that software development teams use to build code. And I act as the voice of the customer. So when a team needs to know, okay, well, how would our customers react to this? One of the things that I can do is I can say, come to me and I will act as the customer, so you don't have to go directly to the customer. So I'm a representation of the customer within a dev team when I act as a BA. But I think you're probably more interested in how much money I make. Let's talk about salary. The median salary for BAs in Canada is $66,000. Now, I got that number today, so it is a recent number. It's not from 2014, like some of the rest of this presentation. But when I started in 2012, I made $50,000 a year as a software developer. After a couple years of bouncing around different jobs and getting raises, I made it to $65,000 a year as a BA, so right on the median in 2018. As of today, I make $78,000 a year, and that is a senior technical writer. But I'm still on the BA kind of track. We've talked about being, yep, go ahead.
One quick question. Can I just ask, and I also forgot to mention to everyone, all the students listening, that Melissa absolutely is okay if you jump in with a question at any point. My question is, how important was money to your decision about sort of shifting your career?
So I can say that I have been offered salaries that are double and at least one case triple my current salary, but I've said no to every single one of them. And it's a decision that even my parents have trouble understanding, but I have a metaphor here that sometimes helps people understand why I made that decision. And that's, imagine that you were taken out of the class that you're in now, and you're put in a new class, same teacher, same everything else, except all of your worst enemies are in that class. Even if the work and what you were learning was great, it's really difficult to work in an environment where you don't feel welcome, well, the culture doesn't fit you. And that's what it tends to feel like after a couple years of working with a company where the culture doesn't suit you. It just starts to scratch at you, and it's just friction all the time. So I am waiting for the right opportunity. Any other questions while I'm stopped here? I know salaries, and nobody ever talks about salary, but I do not mind talking about salary. Okay, I guess I keep going then. So good. So we've talked about being a BA. We've talked about software development, a little bit at least, but what kind of other careers are there available in CS? Well, there's lots. In this list, everything on the left side are roles that I've taken directly from our company structure. So we have all of those roles, and a good portion of those people have some CS education. Not all of them, but most of them. On the left side, those are roles that I know exist, but have specifically at IQmetrics. So there's lots of different types of jobs and careers within computer science. But looking at this list, it can be kind of overwhelming. So other than salary and the number of jobs, why might you consider pursuing a career in computer science? Well, we got some pretty great perks. Aside from the benefits that we primarily get when we are in a physical office, which I'm not right now, we have flexible hours. I've been working home now for 4 months. We get 7 weeks off in the form of what we call a sabbatical every 7 years. Sad story. I was supposed to start my sabbatical on March 16th, as you can imagine, right in the middle of when all the announcements were coming out. So I had to cancel my European travel plans, which I had planned for more than 2 years, cancel everything. And I still don't know when I'm going to go on that sabbatical. I came back to work because it seems silly to sit at home when I couldn't go anywhere. I guess I could have done some home renovations, but anyway. We also have great health benefits, RSP matching, but most importantly, we have an environment where we can create great experiences for ourselves by having an amazing workplace that can do things like create this silly lip dub that we did. And I think this was back in 2014, so this is quite a while ago. You can see me with the fight sign and my terrible unbrushed hair. I've thrown a lot of information at you in the past 17 minutes. And it can be tough to take all that information and try to figure out how it applies to you. So to help you kind of process this information, I sent out a survey to 1,000 industry professionals on Twitter and a bunch of different development sites and aggregated the results. So first question, what are the most important skills a computer scientist should have? I aggregated all the results into a fancy word cloud. So we've got things like problem solving, learning, computers, development. Also in here, I think puzzles, I see school, really, for some reason, engineering. So if these are words that resonate with you, perhaps computer science is a good choice for you.
Hey, Melissa. Yep. One word I didn't see in there that I know often, especially for high school kids, can be the intimidating factor is math. I know math, we all know math is there, but like, I think it's a perspective thing. Well, what's your thoughts on that?
So I was particularly bad at math. It was probably one of my worst subjects all the way through university, but I can say that, oh, it is in here. The tiniest little mathematics right there in comparison to everything else. Math, you decide to pursue your degree. I virtually never use any form of math that I used in school in my day-to-day, and I can't remember the last time I did. It says my quality is bad. Am I still there? I'm going to wait and make sure.
Yeah, I turned off my video just to speed it up too.
Yeah, okay. I think we're good now. Sometimes that happens. Okay, so the story was I wasn't good at math. I was afraid to take computer science because I wasn't good at math. I was encouraged to do it anyway by, I don't know, I guess myself. But I made it through the university required math courses and the discrete mathematics that you have to take for computer science degree, which is radically different than traditional math. It's much more easier to understand. And since then, I've done virtually no math at all. So I escaped the problem of math. But if you like math, which is absolutely fine, some people love it, some people are great at it. There are areas of computer science where having an aptitude for math will make all the difference in the world. So like computer graphics, I think is one. Working with, I don't know, computational algorithms. So there's kind of like a split where there's parts of computer science that virtually no math involved whatsoever, and there's parts where if you love math, you'll love this.
The other thing, Melissa, too, I know a lot of, especially I see this with female students, is they're very creative. And sometimes I think that they won't be able to kind of express a creativity in computer science. So I thought maybe you could, I don't know if you can connect that now or later in your presentation. And then one other quick thing is I know some of my students think a route like Red River, which I think is a great program too. And can you talk about IQ metrics and your experience with Red River grads there?
Certainly. So I used to have a slide in this deck that talked about the percentage of participants who went to university versus college versus some other educational option. So we take co-ops primarily from the university programs. but we also take co-ops from Red River. So I do like Red River as a program. And it is especially valuable for some of the career paths within CS that are highly, turbulent. So web development, for example, you have to learn constantly. Just everything is constantly changing, always learning. So when you do a program like Red River, I would imagine they would do a lot of focus on technologies that would be relevant right now. So that would be a great place to say, okay, well, if I want to be a web developer, I don't necessarily need all of this algorithmic knowledge. I can go straight into the things I need to learn. So it's definitely an option. It can make it more difficult to get certain types of jobs within CS, but I like to think that it's not about the paper that you hold or the qualifications that someone else says you have. It's about who you know and what you can do. So I would like to think that if you can prove yourself to be just as good as anyone else, regardless of what degree they have, it won't matter. And we have programmers who have no post-secondary education whatsoever. All they have is a high school degree. The question about creativity, I have an opinion that programming itself is a creative act, an act that requires creativity and is not a route action, like a functional action. Like, I would like to say building a house, but there's a creativity involved with building a house as well. But it's not something to say, do A plus B plus C equals D, you're done. There is creativity involved. And sometimes that can become a problem for some people who are deeply, deeply creative and they want to pursue their creative passions outside of work. And they become so enmeshed in spending all of their time at work that they don't have the creative juices to pursue what they want to outside of work. It's kind of a depressing example, but that's just to show you that it absolutely requires creativity, because if it didn't, why would these people who are so creative find themselves unable to work on their passions because they've put everything into their work? That was a roundabout way of answering your question. How was that? How did I do?
That was awesome.
Cool. I'm gonna go on to the next one. So our next one here is, if you like blank, you will like computer science. Interesting here, math is pretty far down on the list, as is computers, surprisingly. The number one thing is actually puzzles. So if you really like puzzles and problem solving, those are some great indicators that you might enjoy a career in CS. This next slide talks about the organization of classes in formal CS education. So often what happens in a CS degree of any type is the first year is all about getting you up to a certain standard, learning basic programming, getting all of your like stats and English and whatever you need to take to meet basic requirements. The second year becomes shove as much information in there as possible. So the second year is often a very intense year of learning all of the fundamentals. And then the third and fourth year becomes, now you can choose the things that appeal to you. So this question, I think, accurately reflects that third and fourth year advanced classes often become people's favorites because that's the point where they get to branch out and kind of dip their feet in. Do I want to do like human computer interactions? Do I want to do something like AI? Like, what area of CS do I want to pursue? So you can know that first and second year, usually or at least the first part of any formal education, is usually the basics. And then once you get to the end, you get to really feel what are the different opportunities. My favorite was technical writing. Surprise, surprise. That's an actual class at the U of M. And if you attend the U of M, every fall, I do a presentation on API documentation in Christina Penner's Comp 3040 technical writing class, technical communication. So you may see me there. We have another word crowd next, which is, which character traits make for a good computer scientist? So what do we got here? We got communication, learning, understanding, good, giant good word, thinking, patience. Patience is a big one. I didn't expect that one to come in. I think it's because as you're working on code, sometimes it can be very frustrating, and people who have the patience to push through and the perseverance tend to do really well. Next up, now I have some quotes that people gave me. Most everyone who does programming feels like they are terrible at it every now and then. That's normal. There's more to learn than anyone could ever know. You'll always be learning. Oh, bad network quality. You still hear me? Still good?
Still good.
Okay, cool. So this quote talks about imposter syndrome, which is the reason why software developers who've been in the industry for 10, 15, 20 years still sometimes feel like they're not good enough, like they're the person who's an imposter in a group of others who are proficient. It never really goes away, but knowing that everyone else feels that way can help you get past this feeling of, I'm not good enough. Now you know, everybody feels like that sometimes. It never goes away. Even I feel like that sometimes. Like, somehow I've ended up in this position of leadership. How did I get here? I'm not qualified. But just because you feel that way doesn't mean it's true. Oh, what is that noise? That was trippy. Okay, I'm gonna move on. Next quote. We talked about money earlier. It's true. Money is great, but stress, not so much. You have to make a trade-off between how much stress you're willing to take from a culture that doesn't suit you versus how much money it will take to cope with that. And I'm still making that decision myself. Now we have the typical networking question or comment, which is, just because you have all kinds of pieces of paper, it's often more about who you know. I am still actively in talks with people that I went to university with, and some of those people have become CEOs now. Some of those people are director of product for big companies. So hang on to the people that you meet, stay in contact with them, because their connection might pay interest 10, 15 years from after you graduate. So we have one more section, which is a summary of some interesting results from a Stack Overflow survey. So Stack Overflow is a popular website for developers to post questions and answer other people's questions about not just coding things, but lots of different things. So it's a developer community, people who code usually. One of the interesting results is they asked, which language do you most want to learn that you currently don't know? And Python is a runaway winner here. So if you were thinking of learning another programming language, Python might be a good choice, because apparently that's what everybody wants to learn. This is an interesting one. So we have an axis on the bottom of average years of experience, and on the side, median salary. These are in US dollars. So you can see different programming languages, C#, VBA, JavaScript, but then all the way to the edge here, we have this runaway outlier called Perl. Perl is an older language, but what's interesting in seeing it there is that it's a reflection of something that's happening in the industry where data scientists, people who primarily work with data, they get paid a lot more than everyone else. You can tell by the gap, and they often use Perl. So if you want to make a lot of money and you're very good with working with data, you could make a whole lot of money. Data scientists get paid a lot. And finally, I want to end us with some good news. And this is a Canadian labor market opinion made in 2018, saying that there is expected to be a shortage of IT professionals in the next 10 years. And a shortage for people in our industry means that we have more power to get better benefits, better pay, so on and so forth. I'm done. Please feel free to email me. I always respond to emails. Maybe check with Mr. Walks just to make sure it's cool. I don't want to tell people who are underage to email me for no reason, but I will always respond to emails.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Am I back? Sorry, my audio cut out for a minute, and that was all me. That wasn't you. My audio cut out for just the last piece of that. Actually, a lot, if not most, of the students on board with us today are graduating students. So they are 18, so I can't tell them to do anything. They can do what they need to do. And I really appreciate them joining in, and just want to open it up for questions from them. They have any questions?
Hi.
Hello.
I was just wondering what university looked like for you.
In terms of how I felt about it?
Yeah, and like what you learned there and how long it was and if it was really good for you.
Sure. So I started at the University of Manitoba in 2012. It wasn't really a decision so much as that's where my sister went. So that's where I was going. End of story. My parents are paying for it. So I wasn't entirely sure what I wanted to do in first year, but I took Comp 1010, which is the first year computer science course, mainly because my father he is the head of IT for 17 Wing Winnipeg, part of NORAD in Winnipeg. So I thought, well, I'm good with computers because I grew up building computers with my father, so I'll try computer science. And from then on, I was hooked. So first year was sometimes of a challenge. It can be a challenge adapting to a different way of learning. I did a lot of, there's a guy named Grant who does assistance for final exams. He puts up posters all around the university. If it weren't for him, I wouldn't have passed my stats final or my math finals. Once I went into second year, that's the really tough year for computer science. That's the weeding out year where they throw all of the difficult classes at you. So I hung on, but that was a tough year, and it's always a tough year for everyone. You can sometimes make it easier by taking some of them over the summer instead of taking all of them at once. In third year, I started branching out into taking my minors. So I took anthropology and psychology classes, and I went into co-op. So my 4-year program became a 4.5-year program because I did co-op, or maybe it was 5 years. I don't remember, but co-op extends it a bit. But once you start doing co-op, you make a wage. It's like somewhere between $17 and $25 an hour. I'm not totally sure. And then third and fourth year were a breeze. They were so much easier because I got to take the classes that I was actually interested in. So hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Peyton. And Peyton is in grade 10, Melissa. She just took her first computer science course with me that unfortunately got interrupted by the pandemic. So that was a tough one, I know, for her. She's right in the middle of our class, but she's been continuing her learning online, and that's awesome.
Fantastic. Great to hear.
Some of the other people on the line include some girls, 3 girls actually, Melissa, from not only my grade 12 computer science, but they all did the grade 12 IB higher level computer science this year with me. So they did as much free learning through Sturgeon Heights as they could to really prepare them for post-secondary studies in computer science. Some of which will be at university, some of which I know is going to be at Red River, and some of them are still debating exactly which path to take.
Yeah, it can be tough making those decisions. That's super exciting. I wish that I had taken IB computer science. It wasn't a thing that I thought was possible for me. I had a lot of self-doubt, so I just took not the computer science classes in particular. I took more of, I think it was called like desktop publishing and web stuff at the time, but I wish I'd taken IB computer science.
Hi, I have a question. You talked or you mentioned about like almost like creative burnout, because you spend a lot of time working on like in your job devoting some creativity towards that. Have you experienced that before, where there were projects on the side where you just experienced this creative burnout? And if so, what's your advice as to get back onto that creative wave?
That is an absolutely fantastic question, and I have a story just for it. So I mentioned earlier in my presentation that I started as a software developer and then I moved into technical writing. The reason I made that move is because I was young. I didn't quite realize that that creative burnout was a thing. So I spent 5 years doing almost exclusively bug fixes. So if you've worked on code before, you know, bug fixing, you find a problem, you fix it. Imagine doing that and only that on a very large system for 5 straight years. So as it turns out, fixing bugs requires a lot of creative energy, and I did not realize how much it was burning me out. I was also getting married and moving and sponsoring my spouse to come live in Canada all at the same time. So I came to a point where I didn't want to go to work anymore. It was absolutely horrible. So I told my boss that I needed to take some kind of break. So I took a couple of vacation days, and then it was just kismet that I took off my headphones when I came back to work and I heard one of my bosses talking about the need for a technical writer. And I'd always loved technical writing. So I threw my hand up and I was like, don't you dare hire someone to do that job. I'm going to do that job. So I interviewed and got the technical writing position. But it was kind of an interesting moment where I realized that I need to save something for home, because at the same time that all of that stuff was happening, I have been trying to get published as a creative author. I write YA and romantic fantasy since 2014. And I wasn't saving enough of my creativity that I could work at home. So I was just digging further and further into the hole. So as for how to address it, I have a couple of tips. One, try to pick a company that has a reasonable work-life balance. There's a big trend in the industry right now that I hate, which is working however many hours you need to work to get something done, even if it's 80 hours. That's insane. No one should have to do that. People should be able to work the hours that they feel they need to work in order to support their lifestyle. So work your 40 hours, try to work for a company that doesn't pressure you to work more than your 40 hours. Try to use, if it helps, which it does for me, a system like Pomodoro, which is a web app you can install on Chrome, where a timer runs for 25 minutes and then it says, get up, away from your computer, go take a 5-minute break. So I use Pomodoro, that helps. And if possible, seek out companies that offer a sabbatical. So my 7-year sabbatical is overdue, but it helps you get a reset to take those 7 weeks and internalize, yes, this is the career I want to work for, I'm doing right things, blah, blah, blah. So those are my suggestions.
Thank you.
Thanks, Melissa. Any other questions from everybody? Wow, you packed so much into that 35 minutes. I can't believe it. I can't believe it's been only 35 minutes. Does anyone else have a question?
I have a question, but it's very off topic. I was just wondering if you did get published.
Unfortunately not. I'm still querying. So yeah, it's okay if this is off topic because we talked about other stuff. The writing process, and if you want to be an author, by all means, feel free to email me. I've spent hundreds of hours in the past couple of years learning about this. One of the most difficult parts to getting published is getting an agent in the first place, unless you pursue self-publishing, which I'm not. So getting an agent takes a really long time because when you send out query letters, which is kind of like a cover letter for books, they can take anywhere from a month to 16 months to respond. So I've been querying for 3 years and it's real slow.
If this pandemic has taught us anything, it's to be patient, right? So.
Well, good luck with that.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, well then I am going to, on behalf of all of us, say thank you so much, Melissa, for giving us your time today. We really appreciate it. And I really appreciate it as well. I want to say personally how much I appreciate your time. That was an awesome 36 minutes of time there for you. And I hope you kids enjoyed it. I will put this video up on my website afterwards for everyone to enjoy. Thank you so much again, Melissa.
Yep, totally. If you know of any other teachers who are interested in having someone talk about any CS topics, I am trying to continue to do public speaking of any kind during this time where I can't physically go to conferences.
Okay, I'll give you one idea that might scare you a little bit. It certainly scares me. But one of my objectives that I've thought about, and I know even some of my girls, it was in our plan this year, was to reach down to middle school, and specifically girls in middle school, and try to provide some mentorship for them to maybe consider taking computer science either in high school or beyond. I feel like by the time they get to high school, I might miss some. I might miss some amazing people who could enter this. So would you be willing to speak to middle schoolers?
Not only middle schoolers, I have done at least a dozen intro to programming classes in grades 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, and 8. So I've done lots of them, so I'm absolutely willing.
I think those ones are easier. I think those younger kids I think the middle school kids, I don't know. I think they could do a number on all of us, but that's just me.
Yes, let me tell you the joys of trying to teach 60 grade 2s in a single room with one other teacher. It's fun.
Alrighty, I am going to turn off the recording right now. Say thank you again to everybody.